You're tuned in to Shake, Rattle, and Goal, the official podcast of your Springfield Thunderbirds.
Osmanski, a one-timer deflected side of the goal. Alexandrov scores! Hosted
by Matt Baker and Steve Forni. A show that's everything Springfield hockey, with interviews including players, coaches, and staff.
The Springfield Indians repeat as the Calder Cup champions.
Listen to this podcast on all major streaming platforms and wherever you download podcasts.
In his first year at the helm, Kevin McDonald and Drew Bannister have the Teamers in the Calder Cup Finals.
Watch the podcast on the official Shake, Rattle, and Goal YouTube page at SRG Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Matt Baker and Steve Forni. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Shake, Rattle, and Goal podcast, where we talk about everything that involves your Springfield Thunderbirds. I'm your host, Steve Forni, along with Matt Baker, and we're going to be doing this all throughout the season and maybe even then some after. And, you know, it's kind of about time that we had something and an outlet and a place for T-Birds fans to discuss our team, our local team here in Springfield, something that we're really proud of. And I think before we get started, Matt, why don't we just sort of introduce ourselves and tell us a little bit about who we are and where we're from. So Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thanks for listening. I'm Matt Baker. I am not, like Steve, part of the Thunderbirds organization. I'm actually a local phys ed teacher here in Western Mass. I've been a teacher for 16 years now here in Massachusetts. And I really, it's interesting. My call it Thunderbirds journey is an interesting one. I grew up a hockey fan. I grew up in Southern Connecticut with the Whalers. And when I came up here to Western Mass and settled in and started a family, it was one of those things where I was like, all right, at the time it was the Falcons and that was all we had. I remember taking my children to a Falcons game, but it was a little too loud, a little bit too much going on for them at a young age. And it was the 2020 season, the dreaded COVID season, where we first started bringing our kids to games where they were of the age to stay all three periods and get into the games. And then we were kind of upset when that season ended. And then we had the magical Eastern Conference run in 2021-22, and they bought in hook, line, and sinker, and we've been as close to gung-ho diehard T-Birds fans ever since. So I'm excited to bring a true Thunderbirds fan perspective here on this show, and that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to use this platform to be the fan. And to be the voice of the fan, because that's what I am.
Yeah, and hopefully that's what our listeners are too, right? You're a fan just like everybody else, which is great. And we're thrilled to have you on board. I'm glad that you agreed to hop on with this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
For those who don't know me, Steve Forni, the public address announcer for your Thunderbirds. I've been doing it since the last Falcons season, so it's been a long time. I've been around, but I've also worked in radio for a long time. The days of having players come in studio and do interviews was something that I truly missed. And having my own radio show and talking Thunderbirds locally is something that I really miss. So it's nice to have this platform back. And like Matt, I'm a teacher as well. I'm teaching all things broadcasting over at Westfield Tech. So the beauty of this is that we're just a couple local guys who love this team and are really pumped for this season. So we do in our first episode, there's a lot to get to. Obviously it's the off season, but it is fall. And as you can tell, since we are teachers and parents, we do have kids along, and it didn't take long for one of mine to pop in and say hi. So this is my daughter, Ellie. And again, hopefully we're going to have your boys, Jake and Tyler, on a little bit as well. Once the season gets going, they can give us their 2 cents.
I actually was a little nervous to tell them that we'd be recording this morning because they're at soccer camp this morning, and they were like, oh, but I thought we were going to come on. And so they're ready to come on and give their expert opinion. And, my kids, it's fun. My wife and I, we can hear them practicing, your calls actually. Steve, from bed at night. They hung up their poster, their team poster that we got signed, and so they practice, do all their different calls, whether it be Tyler Tucker score from Will Bitten or whatever the case may be. They practice that just about every night in bed, so they're ready to go. They'll hop on a podcast very
awesome.
quickly, I'm sure.
I love to hear that. Cool. So let's I guess we'll start with the biggest, I guess, story of the offseason. The Tommy Cross retiring, a guy that's been in the league a long time, obviously drafted by the Boston Bruins. But a captain and a leader. Obviously got hurt last year. The season didn't go the way he wanted, but it's amazing how he was still always around. He was still in the community. He was still doing interviews. And one of those guys who every time I would talk to him would call me by name. I think he has this like computer memory where he just remembers people's name. I don't even think I ever introduced myself. He just knew. He'd be like, "Hey, Steve," and most of the players don't know me they just know me as the guy with the microphone. So
Sure.
just one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And one of those guys that I think is hard to replace,
Yeah.
But from a fan perspective, Matt, what are some of your thoughts on Tommy as a player and as a person?
As a player, you could always tell that being on the back line there, right? He was that calming sense. I think that was evident. It was missed this past season. And one of the reasons that it was so easy for my family to buy into this team was their community outreach. And I know we're going to talk about that. That's a constant theme, I think, throughout the show, at least today. But he bought into the community. And even this past year, both my boys are in the kids club. And at kids club events, when he was done rehabbing and getting work from the trainers, he would pop in and say hello to the kids, quick hi, how's it going? A little motivation. And then it was off. So you can tell, and I think being local helped him. He understood the community piece outside of the locker room part. I can't speak for how he was in the locker room. I think watching games, we all felt a little bit of, we miss that leadership on the ice. Losing games in the third period. They still had grit, but you can tell there was a little bit missing in the back line. And I think it'll be hard to fill those shoes for whoever wears the C this year. But
yeah, it's amazing how this is a developmental league, and it's teaching young kids how to become pros. And there are a lot of these guys in the league. I think I like Aaron Ness, who's been around. He's been in Hershey, he's been in Providence, but he's one of those guys that you put on your roster because of the leadership and like you said, sometimes it's adjustments shift by shift. Guys get off the ice, and a guy like Tommy Cross is there to say, "Hey, try this instead of that. Do this instead of that." That calming presence that when things are super chaotic, there's a calm, steady hand there to help out these young guys. And yeah, I think that's the big thing for me is we look at the roster. It is pretty young. This is going to be a pretty young team, and there's going to be a lot of new faces too. Who's going to step in and sort of help other players, adjust, whether it's in game, whether it's those three games in 3 weekends where you're on the road and you're driving halfway across New England or wherever. Those are the times when you really need that kind of leadership, and that's what Tommy brought, and that's why I think he was such a nice player to have, not only in Springfield but just in the league. The league needs more guys like Tommy Cross.
Yeah, and you're right. The league, it's an interesting league, and the more I learn about it, it's you've got your veteran signings, you've got your one-way signings, you got your two-way signings, guys up and down multiple times throughout the year, and identifying the roles on a team, I think in the AHL are so incredibly important for that reason. And it appeared, the outside looking in, that Tommy Cross completely understood his role and knew how to maximize talent and community outreach and play on the ice. He knew how to get that out of his teammates. And he will be missed. I wish him good luck, as I know, part of it was the injuries, part of it is the family and the stuff going on in his life. So I wish him nothing but the best, and I'm looking forward to alumni events where hopefully we'll get to be able to see number 4 again.
Yeah, and like you said, he's a local guy. He's from
Yeah.
Simsbury. He's played between Providence and here. He hasn't really gone far, so I don't anticipate him going much further either. So yes, he will absolutely be missed. And you talk about the community involvement. I really do think that starts at the top of this organization. I think that Nate Costa has really emphasized it. And when you meet the sales staff and you see these people, they're all just so nice and excited and full of energy. And I think that all trickles down when you're at the top, set a standard, and you hire the right people, and you have somebody like Jim, who is Boomer's handler, and is willing to go to pretty much everything. You actually get out to a lot more events than I do, but you've talked to me in the past about how Boomer is literally everywhere.
He's literally everywhere. I mean, and it's awesome to see it. They're not hockey events. They have nothing to do with the Thunderbirds or hockey. They're just community events, and Boomer is there representing the Thunderbirds. And again, it's interesting here in Western Mass, we don't have anything. We have the Thunderbirds as far as sports go, big sports. And I remember thinking, again, when they made the finals run, you're playing the Chicago Wolves. And if you're a fan in Chicago, you're competing with the Blackhawks, the Bulls, the Bears. You have other options, you have other choices. And here in Springfield, here in Western Mass, you don't have much else. So seeing the team really buying into the We Are 413, and it makes it easier, at least as my family of 4, to say, yes, we will spend money at the game. We will invest because they're investing in us as our community. They're part of it. As a teacher here locally, we've seen Boomer at my kid's school multiple times a year. He comes to my school multiple times a year. We just saw him at the Country Kicks 109 concert in Agawam. He's there walking around before the concert starts. Again, it's a country concert, nothing to do with hockey. And I think Nate and the other front office, I think they realize that. I think that's part of what they're doing. It's hockey, and yes, you're an affiliate, and the guys on the team, yeah, they're striving to get up to St. Louis, but they know the opportunity they have here in Western Mass, and it's exciting. You have a sense of they're here to stay. It's not going to be every few years finding a new team and renaming, rebranding. They're here to stay, and it's exciting.
Yeah, and even Nate's a local guy. Went to Cathedral, and I think that matters. And when I had my short stint with the Bruins, it was the fans are mostly people that can finally afford to come to a game for a family of 4, and then they go to one game and then they're out.
Sure.
Whereas here, it's like you have, I see the same faces every game for years, and you have these diehard season ticket holders, but then you also just have different families that are in every day, and they're here Friday, but they're not here Saturday, but they're here next Wednesday. And so it's affordable for the family, and they get shown a good time. And for me, it was always like, they would, let's say they had a bad game and they played terrible and they lost and they lose by 5 goals, and you walk out of there and you're kind of dejected. And then you get, you're walking down the street to the garage and everyone's talking about how much fun they had and how great how I had such a great time. Oh, like they don't even, it's not about winning or losing at this level. It is, but it's about the way that you get people to support your team is by making it accessible for family, giving them things to do, making it affordable, having different options for food and drink and all that stuff. And the scientific method that goes into filling a building for a sporting event is something that I think Nate and the staff has done such a nice job of. And And like you said, I don't think it's going to change. I think that they're going to just keep plugging along and keep doing their thing. And it's exciting. So I'm glad that you and the boys and Jill are so, are so into it. And,
Yeah.
I'm getting more and more people that came to one game and they said, hey, I think I'm going to get a 10-game flex for next season, and I'm getting more and more of those from people our age, mid-30s with families that are saying, yeah, we're going to check out 10, 15, 20 games this season because it's great for the kids and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's great to have Jim, who handles Boomer, doing his thing. It's great to have Nate. And again, some of these young kids who work in the front office, I say kids, they're in their 20s, but
Mhm.
they're it's not like I'm going to come work here for 2 years and then I'm going to go somewhere else. Like these guys have been around. I mean, McRobbie and Frank Grimaldi and John Jones. And, these guys, Lauren Blanchard is just one of the nicest people you're ever going to come across. It's so
Awesome.
natural how
Yep.
sweet and wonderful she is. So, Jess Hansen, who is in the front office, is in Agawam, is from Agawam. So, I think that we're in such a good spot. And that's why I think we wanted to do this, was because
Yeah.
let's shine a light on some of these people. And I'd like to even have some of those people come on the show
Hmm. Yeah.
just so over the course of the season we can learn about what they do, where they're from, and whether it's front office people or Luke, who sits up top and runs game operations, to Lucas, who's in charge of all the media. Shay Koharski's in charge of the social media. Like, I want to shine a light on some of these people and put a face to what it is they do, and hear about all the wonderful things that they do within the organization. So that's another thing that I think we're going to do a little bit as the season goes on. As it is just the beginning of fall, so we got plenty of time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great idea. And it really is. I mean, with my kids being in the Springfield Thunderbirds Kids Club, part of that package comes with, behind the scene tour of the locker rooms. And we actually just went on one a few weeks ago with Lauren Blanchard, who you had mentioned earlier. She's the one who I go through for my tickets. But she was in a meeting and it was no problem. Another staff came out, Jimmy Lawless, who I actually taught, which was incredible to see him. I taught him where he grew up in Belchertown, but he came around and then gave the kids a tour. It was, 45 minutes, an hour, no problem, no issues. Showed us the whole arena, the locker room, all the ins and outs of it. It's a wonderful feeling. I wanted to ask you, Steve, like, as in the organization, do you get a sense of that family community too? We definitely, I think, feel it on the outside, because where we go, we see Boomer, the guys on the team, they do their signings and all that. So we get the sense of community. How does that feel in the organization? All the behind the scenes stuff that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to say I get to kind of do what I want, but it's I can go back there and I can ask them questions. I can do ticket requests. I've gone to the NHL. I work in the WNBA. There's nothing like that sense of community that I get with this organization. With the Bruins, I still felt kind of, I don't say out of place, but it's like I'm just another name on the roster, as opposed to here. It's when I came back after my year with Boston, it was amazing to have everybody just, Steve, we're so glad you're back. Like, that to me was meant so much. And, walk by everybody, they all know your name. And, I went in there a couple times this summer and everybody's in there working and they're all like, hey, it's you. How's it going? How's your summer? It's just, it's a great group of people. And even post game, like we'll have, when we do those post game jersey auctions,
Mm-hmm.
and and the whole staff is still there, and you go back and there's a couple pizzas and some sub rolls and and you it's whatever, almost 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and I want to go home, but I don't. I come, I kind of hang out, have a couple slices of pizza, and and hang out. So
Nice.
so to have that sense of like you said, family community from the organization trickles down not only to the fan, but to the people that work there as well. So it means a lot. And of course, Ellie, my daughter right here, who's 3.5, she loves going to Thunderbirds games as well as my son Luca does, who's
Mm-hmm.
in the other room quietly behaving, right, Ellie? Um, But no, that's part of the reason I came back, was that sense of family and community, and being able to get my kids involved, and uh, enjoy the
It,
time. So
it's great. And you know, the interesting part, the fun part to watch too, is I don't think it's not just unique to you and I, that feeling. I mean, look at the sellouts that the front office is able to put together, their social media outreach, you know, thousands of likes and shares every week. You know, and they're filling up the Mass Mutual Center. You know, and I don't want to bash other teams that are in our area, but Thunderbirds front office staff is doing a fantastic job filling the seats. The team is performing, which is making the fans happy, and they're on the right path. They're on to something big, I think.
absolutely, absolutely. So to switch it up a little bit here and talk about the on ice product, which I think is very important as well. Obviously last season, not what they were looking for. They ran into the smoking hot Hartford Wolfpack there in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And and it's coming out of a Calder Cup final year. So, I laugh because Bill Belichick always says every time they go to the Super Bowl, he's like, well, this offseason, now we're behind the 8 ball, because they played so many extra games. And, I'm wondering if a part of that was because when you do go to the Calder Cup finals, you're playing an extra, whatever it is, 25, 30 games. You're playing till July. Your offseason recovery time isn't as long. And then you get thrown right back into it. A little bit of a sluggish start at the beginning of the season, but there was a lot. There was injuries, call-ups, players that weren't there. So, Matt, what do you think was a little bit, well, just to recap the season, relatively successful, not what they were looking for, but what do you think was some of the reasons behind the way that they finished?
I think you pretty much nailed it all. I mean, you think about having to play an extra 2 months of your season, so you are losing 2 months of that recovery time. The T-Birds were able to bring a good core back. They didn't flip the whole roster, so a lot of those guys did play, an extra 2 months. I think too, expectations. This was the first time the Thunderbirds had success, big success. And I think, at least for me, our expectation was, yeah, why couldn't we repeat? Why couldn't we bring it back? Why couldn't we run it back? And we were optimistic for that. And then you think about too how much the St. Louis Blues and is affiliate the right word to use?
Yeah,
I know we're the affiliate, right? But how much that plays a part in your AHL team. You've got Tyler Tucker going up and down, Jake Neighbors going up and down, Alexandrov going up and down, and when your NHL affiliate team is struggling and you're calling up guys to give them that opportunity every week, you're calling up Santini, you're calling up Kessel. McGinn got a shot at the end of the season there. I think that's tough. Injuries play a part of that too. I mean, even if I'm not mistaken, I believe Jake Neighbors, when he had gotten hurt up in the AHL, the timing of his injury is what prevented him from being able to be sent back down for a playoff run at the end for the Thunderbirds. I think that played a part. And like you said, they just ran into a red hot Hartford team that really, I mean, they were in the basement for the majority of the season, if I'm not mistaken. And they just, I mean, their last 2 months of the season, they were playing playoff hockey to begin with. And I actually, as the playoffs went on, I kind of had them, I'm like, oh, maybe they do represent the East, because they just were, they were red hot.
Yeah. But it's true though about the affiliate. I mean, you look at Boston, and I'm still a Bruins fan, and I know we have a lot of Bruins fans that are out here in Western Mass, and they were so hot all season last year. They called up Jacob Lauko maybe once or twice. They called up Oscar Steen once or twice. Other than that, their roster never changed. They were mostly healthy. They had other guys stashed on the NHL roster, so they never made any call-ups. So the Providence team and roster pretty much never changed.
Yeah.
And when you get that consistency over the course of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, man, that makes a big difference, And let's not forget too, when you lose Sam Annis was such a big part. He goes to Hershey. They traded Klim Kostin, James Neal out. Charlie Lindgren gets a contract, which is something he deserved. So, you also have that that end element of it too, where the stars. I don't want to say stars, but the guys who have that experience of the Calder Cup Finals leave, and then they get replaced with players who don't necessarily have that experience. That goes a long way too. And let's not forget too that the division was really good. I mean, Providence and Hershey. Hershey wins the whole thing, and Charlotte's always a pain, and Hartford goes on the run, and outside of a couple teams from Pennsylvania, everybody was good. I mean, Bridgeport played really well this season.
Bridgeport had a really good season.
Yeah,
they started off red hot too. But it's a tough division. I kind of, when the schedule was released, kind of like, oh man, I was hoping to see a little bit more spread out schedule. I know it's tough in the AHL, but there's just a lot of games. It'll be interesting to see how the division shakes out. You would expect, and again, there's so much turnover and change in the AHL rosters, but it'll be interesting to see how Hershey responds. We just talked about how hard it appeared for the Thunderbirds. We'll see what happens with Hershey. They had a long run. We'll see what happens with being a Bruins fan. You a little bit hopes that Providence, we'll see what their roster turns out. So I'm anticipating another tough season and a lot of games in that division to be played.
Yeah. And, and looking ahead to that roster, just a couple of things. I think we can assume that Joel Hofer will be up in St. Louis full time. They do bring in Malcolm Subban, which I think, again, you talk about experience, guy who's been around, a guy who you can rely on. I think he's going to be really good for Zarenko, who played great last year. And
do you think, to stay on the goalie tandem for a minute, do you think, is Zarenko expected to be the one? Is Subban a veteran presence to? I mean, he's going to play as well as he can, but is he sort of that, coach to get Zarenko to that next level too? Is that going to be his role? Do you have any idea of how that's going to play out?
So I would have to assume, I mean, just on the path that Malcolm Subban has taken, former first round pick, I feel like he's always had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and rightfully so. I mean, the success of PK, and right. I think that there's a lot. I think he's a very interesting, intriguing player. I do think that there's a little bit of a, I'm the starting quarterback, so I don't like the backup quarterback kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
I think there will. I don't think it's, but I do think that I think Subban will probably end up getting more games, but I do think that it'll be very close to 50-50 splits when we look at how many games have been played throughout the course of the season. It might be 55% Subban, 45% Zarenko, but and there's injury history there as well. So all it takes is one guy to go down. But whenever you get those 3-and-3 weekends, or you get a Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or something like that, 1 week it might be 2 games for Subban, 1 for Z. The next week it might be the other way around, But I do think that Subban will be very good for his development. And I think that that'll go a long way for him this season. I think Hofer was a good help with that too. But I think that this will be a big year for Zarenko in terms of him getting more acclimated to the AHL game. And I expect a really solid year in between the pipes from both of these guys.
Awesome. That's good to hear. I mean, I kind of had that feeling too. The Subban signing, when that came, that was, I'm probably most excited to see how that plays out. Other than their young draft picks that the Blues made, but
yeah. And we do have a couple other players that have come in already on free agency. Wyatt Kalniuk, who's from Hartford, who I thought last year was kind of a pain in the neck to play against. I think that he's going to have a pretty big role this year. Josh Jacobs has been around, a defenseman. Will Bitten's brother Sam will be in, and again hasn't exactly hit all of his expectations. He went undrafted, so we'll see what we get from him. And a guy I'm really excited, I assume will be down, is Mackenzie McEachern, who's a guy who was
he's coming back. Yep.
Yeah, another big part of that Calder Cup run. So, we talk about losing guys like Hofer, and who knows where Scotty P will be, who knows where Alexandrov will be, but it does in addition to all the young draft picks, which I think we'll get to next episode, you do still have all of these guys who've been around. They got a lot of experience that are going to come back and hopefully have some pretty good sized roles here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping, I wish Alexandrov all the best. I think he's kind of trending to be, at least right now, on the bubble like he was last year. So we'll see what he's done in this offseason, if he can be a guy that stays up a little bit more in the NHL. And we touched upon that earlier. That's one of the hardest things I think about an AHL team. I think about my sports background and history, and the best seasons I've ever had in whatever sport it was because almost off of the field, off of the court, you had a little bit more connection with your teammate. I'm sure these guys are professionals. They know how to handle it, but it's just got to be tough being up and down. And I'm just trying to think of Tyler Tucker playing one night in St. Louis, 2 nights later, he's over here in Springfield for a weekend, and then he's back up to St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how the Blues roster shakes out. They do have a lot of money tied up, especially in the back end, to guys like Torrey Krug and those kind of players. So, I think you'll probably end up getting sort of one or the other. I don't know if they're going to take Perunovich. I don't know if they're going to take Tucker, and have them sort of be a full timer up there. Alexandrov is one of those guys that could be up there, and one night he's on the 4th line, the next night he's up on the 9th floor, and then he's back on the 4th line, and he's back up, so they did that a lot with Josh Levo and Nathan Walker last year up there. So
yeah.
Again, like you said, consistency, they might, again, I got to check out what they're, like you said, it can get convoluted, but Mackenzie McEachern is the kind of guy that can go up and come down and go up and come down. What do those contracts look like? But there are some interesting names coming in, and I think we're due for a pretty good season here.
I hope so. We do have a few key departures from the roster next year. Just to rattle them off here, we've got Sam Rukov is headed off to Philly. Brady Lyle is up in Calgary. Ferk headed back overseas, is playing with Swiss. Highmore back up north. He was a good player. He was one who I did not know much about at the start of the season, and then as the season went on, he was a heck of a player. I'm glad he made the All-Star team there and represented the T-Birds with Hofer. But Santini's heading over to the West Coast with the Kings, and Witkowski. He battled injuries last year.
Yeah, he was hurt most of the year.
Yeah, he's an older vet, so I don't want to assume anything or pretend like I have inside information, but he's currently unsigned. I don't believe he's signed with anybody. He hasn't announced anything, at least that I've heard of yet, but he's still unsigned.
Well, yeah, and I mean, between Ferk and Highmore, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you're going to have to replace 60 goals between the two of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a lot of offense they're going to have to make up. Santini's one of those guys I just really liked. Solid. You knew what you were getting. And again, another nice guy, just like a really nice, good dude. So, and it's
I used to always enjoy me and the boys and Jill. We'd get to the games early. We love watching warm-ups, and we would always try to get there early. Santini had his little hideout perch pregame up in up top level of section 31. He'd sit there, listen to his music before the game started, and the boys would always try to give him a little fist bump as he came down the stairs.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, we'll miss that. We're gonna have to be on put our detective eyes on and see if we could find another guy scouting out pregame.
I love that. Well, we got about 4 minutes left. I do just wanted to talk a little bit about next week. We'll be talking about a lot of the prospects. Again, we're going to see a lot of turnover. This is going to be a big year, I think, for the development of the Blues prospects. So we are going to discuss that a little bit more in depth next week. I also just wanted to mention that if you wanted to be a part of the show, you can on social media, you can reach out to us. We are on Facebook, Twitter, at SRG Podcast, Shake, Rattle, and Goal. And if you have questions, comments, definitely let us know. And the other thing too is if you want to be a part of it in terms of a sponsorship, we're looking for anybody that wants to. We're happy to plug your organization, your company, be a part of the team. We want local businesses, right? Local team, local businesses. So if you are looking for sponsorship opportunities and you want to get in on this, and as we roll along, we'll have more hard numbers as to how many listeners we have and things like that, and our reach. And we can certainly work something out. So feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Matt, hit us up on social media. We're happy to get you and your company involved in what we're doing here.
Absolutely. And what's the handle again? We're at SRG.
At SRG Podcast on Twitter, and Shake, Rattle, and Goal. You can type that right into Facebook, and it'll pop right up. You can send us a message there as well. We'd be happy to have you along. So this first one is just a little something to, I think, get our feet wet, right? Wet the whistle a little bit.
Introduce ourselves, and what we're close, about 2 months away from the start of the season, so we're starting to get excited. I know I've got my Flex Pass and my kids club tickets already bought. If you're thinking about it, reach out to the front office staff, because they are wonderful. As I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not a lifer. I'm a newbie here with the Thunderbirds, but talking with Lauren and other ticket sales staff, they're incredible to work with. They will be able to find a package for you, and you'll be happy. The more games you go to, you will be happy. I know it's a wonderful thing. It's brought my family closer together. We have our pregame ritual, going to different restaurants before the game. So it's a great time.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you. Thanks for finding time for us today. And we appreciate everybody out there for listening, and we look forward to doing it again. So thanks everybody for listening. Go Thunderbirds.
Let's go T-Birds.